SALT stands for state and local taxes. The SALT deduction lets you deduct from your federally taxable income a certain amount of money that you spent on a state or local tax, like a state income tax or a local property tax. It turns out that in order for the SALT deduction to be worth taking instead of just the standard deduction, you have to pay a lot in state and local taxes. So much, in fact, that the only people who generally take the SALT deduction are those that are well off or very, very well off. The other problem with the SALT deduction is that for most of its existence, it didn't have a cap. That meant if you were paying $100,000 in state and local taxes, you got to write all $100,000 off of your federally taxable income. Now, you and I definitely are not paying that much in state and local taxes, but billionaires or millionaires are. That unlimited cap went away in 2017 when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed. Under the TCJA, you could only write off a maximum of $10,000 in state and local taxes. In 2022, Biden tried, and thankfully failed, to pass a law that would have increased the SALT deduction cap from $10,000 to $80,000. This would have benefited largely just the wealthy. Since Biden's attempt failed, this meant that the $10,000 cap on the SALT deduction continued into Trump's second term. And since it was his administration that put that cap into place initially, you might expect that he'd just leave it alone. Instead, the big beautiful bill changed how the SALT tax deduction works. Now, if you make less than $500,000, you can write off up to $40,000 in state and local taxes. If you make more than $600,000, you can only write off $10,000. Sure, this hard $600,000 threshold does mean that the truly wealthy who are abusing the SALT deduction before won't have access to a bunch of tax breaks. But raising the cap to $40,000 still advantages a group of pretty well-off taxpayers. Now that we're near the end, I have to confess, there's something that I've been keeping from you. These nominal caps on the SALT deduction, if you're rich and well-connected with lawyers and accountants, they don't matter. That's because there's a workaround that allows you to continue to access unlimited SALT deductions despite the supposed cap. This workaround revolves around something called a pass-through entity, which is a special kind of business. For some reason, 41 states have seen fit to make it so that if you are the owner of a pass-through entity, and this pass-through entity pays state and local taxes, when the pass-through entity distributes its income to you, not only do you not have to pay state and local taxes on that distributed income, any amount of state and local taxes that the pass-through entity paid before it gave you that income will now be ascribed to you, and there is an unlimited SALT deduction available to pass-through entities. In other words, if you just route your money through a pass-through entity and then pay state and local taxes at the entity level, you can continue to write off the sum total of your state and local tax liability, despite this supposed cap. As you can imagine, this kind of complicated legal and corporate workaround is in practice only available to the rich.